Good morning, everyone. We are going to start our session now. Thank you so much for coming to our session called Voices of Nordic Youth, presenting the first Nordic Children and Youth Statement here at COP30. We are going to start with a brief introduction and opening remarks. But before we start over, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Rita Lousa. I'm originally Portuguese, but living in Sweden for more than 7 years now, and have been together with many other young people from the Nordics engaged in different youth associations over the past 5 years. And due to that, I'm here today moderating this session, and we will have the opportunity to hear from a lot of young people from other regions in the Nordic countries about what we've worked on together, what are the challenges of getting our voice heard here at COPs and in the UNFCCC processes, but also what are we demanding from our governments at COP on climate. Thank you everyone for coming today, and now with no further ado, I would like to introduce the Minister for Environment and Energy and Climate of Iceland, Mr. Johan Paul Johansson. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be delighted to hear your opening remarks.
Thank you so much. Dear guests and dear representatives of Nordic children and youth, it is a pleasure to join you here today as we mark the launch of the first shared Nordic Children and Youth Statement on climate action. In my plenary speech yesterday, I spoke about climate tipping points. I spoke about two vital climate systems, the Amazon forest and AMOC, the Atlantic Ocean circulation, and how both are under heavy strain. New research suggests that AMOC is not only gradually weakening, but that the risk of large, abrupt change is real and possibly closer than previously assumed. That destabilization of AMOC would bring profound disruption to Nordic societies, to our infrastructure, our societies, and our living standards, the living standards of our children. And this could even happen in our lifetime. The Icelandic government has decided to approach the potential collapse of AMOC as a matter of national security, a risk that we must prepare for and do everything in our power to avert. This may sound horrifying, and climate change is indeed weakening the very foundations that keep our society safe. But the good news is that none of this is inevitable. Our choices matter, collective action matters, and when young people organize, articulate their demands, as you are doing here today, and build a shared Nordic vision for climate action, that strengthens the resilience of our societies, just as protecting forests and oceans does. Abrupt climate change is a real risk, but it is a risk that we can still prevent if we act with clarity and courage. And this is where your voices make a difference. Climate action is not only about managing decline, but also about creating new possibilities. And we should approach climate action and the energy transition not as a sacrifice of some sort, but as a great building project. It is not only about swapping dirty fuels for cleaner ones, but it is also about building a fundamentally better and more efficient energy system than the one we have today. It is about unleashing a wave of electricity-based technologies, including solar, wind, superhot geothermal, batteries, electric vehicles, heat pumps, smart grids, and digital controls. This is already happening at a surprising speed, But we must move faster. We must remove bottlenecks and clear the way for an abundance of renewable energy, cheap and plentiful. But above all, we must protect the natural systems that have protected us. We have to build policy that is fair across borders and fair across generations. The transition ahead must be guided by scientific knowledge and our common Nordic values, equality, and long-term responsibility. The decisions we make today will shape our lifetime. What we do now together will determine whether next generation inherits a managed transition or a dangerous drift into the unknown. Your work helps ensure that we choose the former. Thank you for your determination. Let us continue this work side by side. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your inspiring words. We would actually like to invite you back on the stage. I'm really sorry, I should have said that right beforehand. We know that your time is very precious at COP. There's a lot going on. And we would like to present you with the Nordic Youth Statement and also take a photo with you. I hope it is okay for everyone. Just needing some help here. Here we go.
I hereby hand to you the first Nordic Children and Youth Statement. And if we could take a picture, you should come as well, the panelists.
Thank you so much. Okay. And with no further ado, as we are in a speedy event today, I will invite to the stage our panelists of today. So please help me in welcoming our dear panelists, starting with Ms. Katharina Bittendorf, the Nordic Youth and Children Climate Conference Coordination Team and founder. Please clap your hands. Thank you so much. In second place, I would like to invite to the stage Mr. Melker Wargbonner, Vice President of PUSH Sweden. Please welcome to the stage. Thank you. And lastly, Ms. Laura Solveig Leffert Schiffer, Iceland Youth Delegate to the UNFCCC. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you all for your audience as well. So this panel, as we've said in the beginning, is all about voices of Nordic youth. And it is to basically talk a little bit more about the work that we've been doing in the past year in terms of bringing together the demands from youth across the different countries that compose the Nordic region on climate, but also to talk more about our personal experiences as climate advocates, climate activists, etc. So with no further ado, I would like to hand over to Katharina to really know a little bit more about what is the Nordic Youth and Children Climate Conference, what is this statement that you have a brief summary on your chairs, and why is this important?
Yes, thank you very much, everybody, and happy to be here and bring this conference, our conference and work in the Nordics to COP30. The conference and the idea of having a broader Nordic children and youth engagement, but also cooperation and collaboration, born from the idea that as Nordic youth we are at different COPs and different international climate spaces, but we've like rarely see other fellow Nordic youth around. So there were different ideas in the beginning of this year of also training, building capacity, and bringing the voices of Nordic youth to these important international conferences and venues, but also the wish to like bring what we do here, what we do in Belém, what we did the past conferences and COPs back to the Nordics and connect it to each other. So from Push Sverige, Yes Europe, together with 4 global shapers hubs of the Nordics, the Icelandic Youth Environmentalist Association and Jamko, we came together to found the Nordic Youth and Children Climate Conference. The idea is peer-led, youth trains youth. We come together, we create a conference, we invite children of youth, and we are very happy that the first ever Nordic YCCC happened this September in Stockholm, together with like about 80 children and youth coming from across the Nordic. And not only like Sweden, Finland, Denmark, the big ones, Norway, but also from Greenland, from Iceland, from Ireland and Sápmi. So really defining what the Nordics is, and with our logo that unites us, the sky that we all look in. So this is kind of the spirit that we engage under and what we wanted to do. We had amazing days in Stockholm, learning about climate crisis, learning about tipping points, as the Icelandic environmental minister said, learning about climate justice and how it affects us, and with the Nordic perspective. And of course, we also came together to write what we want, how we envision the future on international climate policies in the Nordics and internationally. We wrote our Nordic Children and Youth Statement to share with our governments and bring to COP. So we asked for meaningful child and youth inclusion throughout the whole policy processes, for example, from design of policies to implementation. We want a rapid fossil fuel phase out, end of all fossil subsidies. And also we want NDCs. Like when we wrote the statement, there was no European Union NDCs. So Denmark, Sweden and Finland had none. We also analyzed the ones of Norway and Iceland that we had at this time, being like happy that, for example, children, youth and gender and also human rights are included to different levels, but also formulating our own suggestions for these NDCs. To really bring climate protection to a national level. And then we also wanted to acknowledge that the private sector has to pay its price and like contribute its share, as well as commit to multiple parliamentary cycles and like ambitious climate policies that don't depend on like having a greenish government or a climate-focused government, but really that it's like a long-term strategy to make our region and our homes resilient to climate crisis, but also really enable children and youth to have a future and to be engaged. So that's kind of what we did and what we're happy to present here with our fellow co-organizers. And yeah, we're very excited also to bring this point forward and like share what we did here back to the people at home and to the attendance of our conference.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katarina. And just to let you know that on the chairs, you can find the page with our top 5 demands that are in the statement. And so I invite you all to have a read. With this presentation that sets the scene for what we are about to discuss, I now would like to ask our panelists that will engage in a vibrant discussion between themselves and with the audience as well, we hope, to present themselves. So we can start with you, Katarina. Can you tell us a little bit more about you and what is your role here at COP and what is your main interest as well?
Yes, definitely. So hi, I'm Katarina. I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden, and next to like creating NYCCC, I also work with Yes Europe and leading their projects on international level, climate policies, UN work, and all of that. I mainly focus on the topic of gender, so gender responsive climate policies, but also negotiating here a new gender action plan that is hopefully adopted by end of this week.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Melker, what about you?
Yes, so I am the vice chair of Push Sweden, and I am situated now in Lund in Sweden, and I am here at COP with What GP, and we are focusing a lot on nature-based solutions, but also climate justice and climate finance. So that's what we're doing here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. What about you, Laura? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yes. Whoa, that was really loud. Yeah, my name is Laura. I am Iceland's UN Youth Delegate on Climate. I'm also the president of the Young Icelandic Environmentalists, which is like the only Icelandic youth climate NGO. We focus on everything around the environment, so climate, nature conservation, circularity, and environmental education. And then I'm also the Iceland campaigner for the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. So I also work to try to get Iceland to be more ambitious about phasing out fossil fuels.
Fantastic. And I will start actually with you, Laura, immediately with our first question. And I will invite the audience, if you have questions in the meantime, just raise your hands. Let's make this a bit more interactive and the discussion between all of us here. So the first question that I have here for you is, can you share examples of past cooperation with Nordic youth in your role? And are there any instances where collaboration led to better outcomes?
Yes. I think in general, Nordic youth are collaborating more and more. At least that's what I sense from my previous years in the field. So whether that be more Nordic youth conferences that we go to, funding applications across different Nordic countries, having open dialogue, sharing tips and tricks, strategizing on how we can reach our goals. But then I'm also very happy to share the next step in the Nordic youth climate sector, which is something that we just found out this week and is really exciting. So since COP29 last year, we sat down together, some of the Nordic youth and the youth delegates, and discussed how we think in general we are missing more Nordic collaboration, and we're missing a bit more representation fairly between the Nordic countries in UNFCCC processes at COP. And so we sat down with the Nordic Council of Ministers, and we've been working quite closely with them throughout the whole year, brainstorming how we could really make this improvement. And this week we actually received funding from the Nordic Culture Point, and we are establishing an umbrella organization called the Nordic Youth Climate Alliance, which will be like this, as I said, this umbrella organization that different NGOs that work on climate and are youth-led around the Nordics will be able to engage. We will have more funding to send Nordic youth to COP. And then we will also make sure that Nordic youth are equally represented. So we have partners from every single Nordic community. We have partners from the Faroe Islands, from Iceland, Greenland, Sami, Åland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland.
And you did not forget anyone.
So this is something that's really exciting. And now that we received the funding, we can start organizing more around. So if this is something that any of you are interested in being a part of, definitely, don't hesitate to come after the panel and discuss with me.
And I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that this was a great announcement, because this is a funding announcement for actually bringing Nordic youth to the climate space and the climate conferences. So can we raise our hands for this one? Thank you so much. It was a lot of work from all the organizations present here. So moving on to our next question. Melker, what challenges exist for Nordic youth to cooperate at Nordic and global levels?
I would say that there is mainly 4 different risks or problems. And the first one I would say is that even if we are very similar, we're still 5 different Nordic countries with 5 different governments, with 5 different priorities and attitudes. And I mean, just look now at what's basically happening in Sweden. I mean, we basically went from being a climate leader, in my view, to being a cautionary example. Like, this is the first time in over 10 years when there is no Swedish youth representative in the Swedish delegation. And this is also the first COP in several years where there's no Swedish minister here. And it really shows the priorities of this government. So this thing about that we have to be resilient in these parliamentary shifts, and that these things can happen, and that we as Nordic youth can unite, stand together in these parliamentary shifts. So that's one thing. And the other thing is not being taken seriously. And because I see it now at COP, and it's so frustrating that young people sort of become this like hope inspiring figureheads, or like symbols, or like a PR machine, rather than actual decision makers for these governments. And I'm so sick and tired of hearing that, we're so inspired by you young people, and then slamming the door in our face when we want to go into the negotiating room. And so I think there's a huge risk for us young people to be comfortable in that seat and just, okay, this is what it is. We are not going to be part of this, but at least we're here. So that's one thing also. And the third thing is resources. I mean, this COP has been one of the most expensive ever. And it's so hard for us young people to get finance here. And I'm so thankful for WatchEP, the Dutch Foreign Office, Oxfam, and WWF for me as a Swede to even be here. I mean, to create this Nordic network, that takes time, that takes money, that takes support. So please, governments, instead of just saying, we're so inspired, give us the resources that we need to represent ourselves. And also the resources to be able to have the know-how. Because I really do think that there are many youth who feel that they are not really part of this, or that they feel uncomfortable being here because these negotiations are very complicated and there's so much to know. And us youth, we are naturally unexperienced. And so give us the resources so that we can get the know-how, so we actually can represent ourselves. And the last and final thing, which I don't necessarily think is a problem or a risk, it's more like a strength, but if it's not handled correctly, it can pose a problem, and that's diversity. I mean, we are 5 different countries, and as you said, Laura, like from Greenland, like Inuit people, Sami people, and young people from like Stockholm and Copenhagen. That's very different experiences. So we have to take all these perspectives in mind when we have our advocacy work, so everyone feel included. But if we do that, I think we'll be much stronger together.
Thank you so much, Melker. And I think you all could feel both Melker's passion, but also talking about serious issues about how we are being taken seriously as youth climate advocates, as participating in the decision-making processes, and also be given the time, the funds, and the recognition for our work. I actually wanted to build on that because one of the questions we had here was about exactly being taken seriously and what are the challenges in having that happen. And I know that, Katarina, you've been very involved in the negotiation rooms, in the negotiation spaces. You yourself are also a youth climate delegate. So could you explain us a little bit more what are the challenges of being taken seriously as youth in high-level climate spaces, and how can we ensure that negotiators listen to us? Perhaps even more than negotiators, also policymakers. So I will add that one on.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I completely echo what Malka says. If you, we always ask for meaningful participation, right? So that's like a common term. But the thing people overlook is that meaningful not only is providing the space, but actually enabling people to participate in the space, which also means we need training, we need capacity building, education. COP spaces, it's more like than just being here. That's great, that's amazing. We need young people here. But we also need to equip these young people to know what's going on, to be like, okay, what do we negotiate here? How do negotiations work? How do I engage with negotiations? It's not about just sitting in the room and listening to parties speak. It's also about having like conversations with your ministers, knowing what the text is about, what it like words mean. Like they use a very weird English here. People like, even if you're like from Great Britain or the US or Australia, that's a different type of English, because shall and should mean completely opposite things. It's just one word that can change the meaning of a sentence from being legally binding and being an achievement and a good outcome to, well, not that nice. So on these different things, you have to train people. It's not like sufficient to just expect them to know that. And it's also for governments, they have to be aware that we come and to engage with our like needs and realities and our backgrounds, very diverse like backgrounds, what we work in, what we study, where we come from. And they can't expect us to speak like a negotiator who done that for 30 years. That's like not how it works. So I think from both sides, there needs to be some kind of like deliberation, some kind of acknowledgement, how to facilitate a participation that is still like fully and equal and meaningful in a way, but also equip the people. And we can't start that at COP. That has to be a process throughout. And if we are honest, we know parties arrive here with their position set. They all have a position paper in front of them that they read out with what they want, what is okay, and what's the red line. These position papers are key to influence. So what young people need to be is engaged in the process of developing these positions to make sure everywhere in this position paper it says children and youth, it says indigenous peoples, it says gender responsive and transformative. All these different aspects. If we talk about a just transition and green jobs, that are things that we need education through it. All these different little things. And I think this is something that is lacking a lot, that we engage young people throughout the whole process, and that parties are not just taking youth delegates to COP to be there and like shadow the delegation, which is an amazing opportunity. Don't get me wrong. It's a very much of a privilege to be able to do that. You learn a lot. You are also able to engage like with the text, with the negotiators, but it also to really have a greater impact, we need it all year round. And I think a challenge is also that it takes time for young people to learn how the space works. When I first started, I was very lost. I was like, wow, is this COP big? There's so many things going on, like hundreds of events at the same time. You never know where to be, what's most important, whom to meet, whom to talk to, how to advocate for your points. So what we really need is to prepare young people. And right now, a lot of work that I do in completely voluntary capacity is providing these like capacity building programs. In a larger sense, our conference was a capacity building program, but it's not efficient to build that on young people with unpaid work, trying to educate and empower other young people. This needs resources. This needs like people who actually have like job and paid capacity to do it, and don't do this on top of a full-time job, on top of like a studies, because also that's not sustainable from like the working hours that we put in. And I think that's also a challenge, also that I have to recognize myself. Working full-time, of course, I work the same amount of hours in voluntary work, and that's working for now, but it won't work forever. So I think this is also something we need to reflect on and build structures and systems that we still have these opportunities and have these programs, but it's maintained in a good capacity and with people that actually like have like paid working hours to actually fully dedicate to it and make sure these things exist in a good quality.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think you have a great point in terms of really making sure that it's not just, in a way, free labor that is fueling the Nordic youth engagement, but it goes beyond that. It becomes something that is thought through systemically and that is invested in, really thinking as well about the future in a way and building the capacity on a growing momentum. And I mean, just for all of you in the audience, I think the majority of us, even if not now, we have done a lot of volunteering ours to be engaged in this space, to know as much as we know, and to be, meaningfully engaged in negotiations with policymakers, etc. Okay, so I am moving to the last question, but I will open for Q&A. So start thinking about. Oh, you already want to ask something? Perfect. Then let's go. I will give you mine.
Thank you so much. It's been very interesting. Thank you for your perspective. Yeah, not worry about that. So a bit of what I would like to ask is how you see scaling up, to speak in more COP terms, maybe institutional arrangements. This is to say, if you see any benefit, for example, in trying to work on a national level, for example, in task forces or working groups within Parliament, to then be able to have that capacity building and those skills move towards COP. Because from my perspective, I think it gives you certain tools that can be very helpful for negotiations without necessarily being directly related to international international elements, but it still gives you this more long-term perspective where even if the government is shifting towards another side, you can have that space and you can try to protect that space. Like, for example, I don't know, a youth working group in Parliament, right? So I was wondering if you're kind of trying to scale up maybe sometimes certain national initiatives to the international level, or if you're thinking more on this umbrella group that just got funded.
Thank you so much. Who wants to go first?
I think we agreed that I go first and then we continue. So generally, I think that's super crucial and important because most climate policies are nationally determined. Like also what we discuss here, it's national positions that we try to kind of find consensus on in middle way so everybody feels that it's something that represents them. And yes, like Denmark, Sweden, and Finland negotiate as the European Union, but also this position is made out of all the 27 national positions. So having this is crucial. And we all are lucky enough to live in democracies. And I think engaging through parliament is the most important thing because you directly influence what gets negotiated here. And it's also even if we reach consensus here, it comes back to national level and it has to be implemented. And we have to make sure this implementation happens. It's great that we have a Paris Agreement that says 1.5, but we have an ICJ advisory opinion that says that's legally binding. We have the law, it's 1.5. But if we don't act upon it, that's great, it's on paper. It doesn't bring us that much forward, right? So doing this on national level, I think is crucial and connect with people and really also raising awareness because governments are sensitive to media and is they want to be re-elected, right? So if there's a lot of attention to the things and they're failing on delivering, it also creates pressure on them. So I think this is a very important tool.
Yeah, I was going to add one more concrete example. Something that I'm quite passionate about is the potential for local and regional youth climate councils and climate councils that are, in general, regular contact or having regular meetings with government officials and decision makers. And that's something that Denmark has. They have a climate youth council. Finland has one that's both on climate and biodiversity, which I also think is really good two topics to mix. And it's something that I would really like to bring to Iceland. So I think, and eventually, if that is something that in general Nordic governments are willing to establish, then we could even start talking about a Nordic Youth Council, Nordic Youth Climate Council, So that's also a concrete example of something that I definitely think that we should be working on and are working on.
Melker, do you want to build on it?
Yes, but I want to build on the point you made with having good relations with the different governments, and as I said before, that's very hard to do if they cut the finance, so I agree with you that it's crucial to have good relations with the national delegations, but when there are these parliamentary shifts, we have to do something, and that is basically one of the things that we've done now with NYCA and NYCCC is to create like this safe zone for us, this like umbrella, so that if something happens in a country such as now in Sweden, or that could maybe happen in Finland or in Denmark or in Norway or in Iceland, we will help each other out in the Nordics.
Very good point. I was wondering if there is one other question from the audience. Don't be shy. Nothing? I'll let you think a little bit more for a last question. And I will ask to the three of you, but maybe starting with you, Laura. Based on this, that we just talked about the national to regional level to global engagement, what do you see as opportunities for Nordic youth to work together when facing common challenges, as Melker just highlighted? So it's really connected to what we were just discussing.
Yeah, I mean, Nordic youth face a lot of common values and challenges, whether they're societal, cultural, or environmental. Most of the Nordic countries are also in the Arctic region, and the Arctic region is by far the fastest warming region on Earth, 4 times faster than the global average. So that's a huge challenge that we face, like the Icelandic environmental minister talked on. So that means there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration. And whether that be through youth-led forums, like the example I brought with Nika, the Nordic Youth Climate Alliance, or whether it be applying for more funding for more projects together, or conferences, or having more democratic forums, like I said, Nordic Youth Council or climate youth councils locally and regionally, but then also regional projects on the topics that are across the Nordics, like our massive carbon footprint compared to most other countries, or overconsumption, or energy production and energy consumption, fossil fuel subsidies, etc., which are things that we could be tackling together. And one of my NGOs in Iceland, like biggest project, is called Solin, which is the sun. And it's where in parliamentary elections, we evaluate the environmental policies of all the different political parties based on how they do in nature conservation, circularity, and climate. And then we give them a grade depending on how they're doing, which then we make huge on social media, into news, etc., where people can kind of vote, oh, you know, I think climate and environmental affairs are important to me, which party should I vote for? And if you don't have the time to research all of their policies, etc., you can have a look at that. And that is something that we've been trying to bring to other countries in the Nordics. We've been giving them like copies of our toolkit. And I know that our partners, Natur og Ungdom in Norway, have done something similar now for these elections. So that's also just an example of a regional campaign, a local campaign that can maybe be upscaled and made regional on topics that we sort of all face.
Fantastic. Melker?
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And just to add, we are not only facing common challenges, we're also we have a joint culture in a way, and a joint history, and there are so many other instances where we collaborate in the Nordics. I mean, we're here at the Nordic Pavilion, so and there's so many other societal issues or like foreign issues that we collaborate on. So why can't the youth do that on this crucial question? Because I mean, we're the generation that's going to live with the consequences of the decisions or the decisions or non-decisions being made here. So for us Nordic youth to join up and unite, I think it's great.
Katarina, do you want to add anything?
I think generally it's also like about the spirit. So they did like similar approaches, even though it's different. And I think we see it in different ways, that it's a lot of support in the region. Now that Sweden is fighting to get like a really serious youth negotiator program back. It's like a lot of push from Denmark and the other Nordic regions and countries to and like youth associations to really be like, okay, I can help you. Like, let's like have Finland speak to Sweden. Let's show how we do it here in Norway, and really push that and learn from best practices, because we are in fact quite similar. So I think this is a lot of like unity and supporting each other, which is a great like community also among the young people that are engaged.
Perfect. With that, we are almost finishing. So I'm just going to ask you, this is a bonus question since we didn't have another question from the audience. Could you tell us what is your one request for COP30, for the Nordic youth, so that we get to know a little bit more about your demands? Just very quick. Melker, go.
Institutionalize youth representation.
Perfect. Katarina.
Intergenerational equity and gender justice.
It's so hard to choose one. I'm going to say youth delegates for all Nordic communities.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for your patience with us today, for coming to our event. And I hope you can read our Nordic Youth Statement. So please feel free to take the copies on the chairs. Thank you so much.